Marcus Chen cursed under his breath as his cargo ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed across the control panel while alarms screamed in his ears. The hyperdrive was dead, and he was falling out of faster-than-light travel in the worst possible place. "Computer, where are we?" he asked, gripping his seat as the ship lurched. "Unknown system. Detecting one inhabited planet. Gravity and atmosphere suitable for human life." The ship's AI responded in its calm voice. Marcus looked out the window at a beautiful blue and white world covered in what looked like crystal formations. He had never seen anything like it. His ship was badly damaged, and he had no choice but to land and hope the locals were friendly. The landing was rough. His ship scraped across a flat area near what looked like a city made of gleaming crystal towers. Steam rose from his damaged engines as Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and stepped outside. And Bidio. The air was clean and smelled like flowers. Everything around him seemed to sparkle in the sunlight. The city ahead was unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall spires twisted up into the sky, and bridges of pure crystal connected them like a spider's web. Marcus started walking toward the city, hoping to find someone who could help him repair his ship. As he got closer, he saw his first alien. The creature was tall and thin, with 4 arms and a body that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, like a bug's eyes. The alien stopped and stared at him. Marcus raised his hand in what he hoped was a friendly gesture. The alien tilted its head, made a clicking sound, and walked away quickly. "Well, that went well," Marcus muttered to himself. He continued into the city. The streets were filled with the crystal beings, all moving with purpose. They wore different colored bands around their arms, and Marcus noticed they seemed to organize themselves by these colors. Some had gold bands, others silver, and many had copper or bronze. The buildings were amazing. Everything was grown rather than built, with crystal formations that curved and twisted in impossible ways. Marcus felt like he was walking through a living jewel. He was looking up at a particularly tall spire when he heard screaming from a nearby alley. Without thinking, Marcus ran toward the sound. In the narrow space between 2 buildings, he saw a young alien being attacked by 3 larger ones. The young one was smaller than the others and wore a band of pure white around its arm. It was being held down while one of the attackers raised what looked like a crystal blade. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed a loose piece of crystal from the ground and threw it hard at the attacker's head. The alien stumbled backward, clicking angrily. All 3 attackers turned to look at Marcus. "Hey, pick on someone your own size," Marcus shouted, even though he had no idea if they understood him. The attackers were bigger than Marcus, but he had something they didn't expect: human reflexes and the willingness to fight dirty. When the first one charged at him with its crystal weapon, Marcus dodged to the side and swept its legs. The alien crashed to the ground hard. The second attacker tried to grab Marcus with its 4 arms, but Marcus elbowed it in what he hoped was its stomach and then punched it in the face. The alien's crystal-like skin was hard, but Marcus's knuckles found soft spots around the eyes. The third attacker was smarter and tried to circle around Marcus. But Marcus had been in bar fights on a dozen different worlds. He picked up a larger piece of crystal and swung it like a club. The alien raised its arms to block, but the impact sent it staggering backward. "Come on then," Marcus yelled, holding the crystal club ready for another swing. The 3 attackers looked at each other, then at Marcus, then at their injured companions. They made rapid clicking sounds to each other before running away down the alley. Marcus dropped the crystal and turned to the young alien. It was sitting against the wall, shaking. Its white band was torn, and there was a crack in its crystal-like skin that leaked a blue fluid. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked gently, kneeling down beside it. The young alien looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. Then, it spoke in perfect English, which surprised Marcus. "You." You saved me, it said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. Why would you help someone you do not know? Marcus shrugged. Because you needed help. That's what people do. Right? The alien stared at him for a long moment. I am Kethvar. You must come with me now. My mother will want to meet you. Your mother? The Queen, Kethvar said simply. Before Marcus could ask more questions, the sound of running feet filled the alley. A dozen aliens in gold bands appeared, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They surrounded Marcus and Kethvar. The leader of the guards looked at Kethvar and made rapid clicking sounds. Kethvar responded in the same clicking language, pointing at Marcus several times. The guard leader turned to Marcus and spoke in English. Human, you will come with us. The Queen commands it. Marcus looked at Kethvar, who nodded encouragingly. Do not worry, the young alien said. You saved the heir to the throne. My mother will reward you. As they walked through the crystal city surrounded by guards, Marcus wondered what he had gotten himself into. The aliens around him moved aside as they passed, and he could feel hundreds of multifaceted eyes watching him. The royal palace was the largest crystal structure Marcus had ever seen. It spiraled up into the clouds, with bridges and platforms extending in all directions. As they climbed higher and higher, Marcus began to understand that he was about to meet someone very important. He just hoped that saving the prince had been the right thing to do. The throne room was enormous. Crystal columns reached up so high that Marcus couldn't see the ceiling. Light bounced off every surface, creating rainbows that danced across the walls. At the center of it all sat the Queen. Queen Zel-Andra was twice the size of any alien Marcus had seen. Her crystal skin was a deep blue color, and she wore a crown that seemed to be made from living light. Her 4 arms were decorated with golden bands, and her eyes, all 6 of them, focused on Marcus as he was brought before her. So, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, you are the human who saved my son. Marcus straightened his shoulders. Yes, Your Majesty. Anyone would have done the same thing. The Queen tilted her head, and a sound like glass bells came from her throat. Marcus realized she was laughing. No, human. Anyone would not have done the same thing. My own guards did not act quickly enough. They follow rules and protocols. You acted without thinking of consequences or profit. She leaned forward. Tell me, what is your name? Ivrifor. 1. When Rising. 2000. Marcus Chen, Your Majesty. Marcus Chen, she repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. You interest me, Marcus Chen. My son tells me you fought 3 armed warriors with nothing but pieces of broken crystal. They weren't expecting someone to fight back the way I did, Marcus said honestly. I just did what felt right. I just did what felt right. What felt right? The Queen repeated. How strange. My people do not act on feelings. We act on logic. And the good of the hive. She studied him carefully. You will stay here as our honored guest while we repair your ship. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine despite her friendly tone. That's very kind, but I don't want to be any trouble. If you could just point me toward a repair shop. Nonsense, Queen Zel-Andra said firmly. You saved the heir to my throne. You are now under the protection of the royal house. No harm will come to you while you are our guest. The way she said guest made Marcus uncomfortable. 2 guards stepped forward and positioned themselves on either side of him. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, how long do you think the repairs will take? As long as necessary, she replied. My best engineers will examine your ship. In the meantime, you will have quarters in the royal tower. You will have servants, fine food, and anything else you require. What if I require my freedom? Marcus asked, quietly. The Queen's 6 eyes all focused on him at once. The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of the crystal structures around them. Freedom is a strange concept, she said finally. You are free from danger, free from want, free from uncertainty. What more freedom could you need? Marcus realized he was trapped, but he also knew arguing wouldn't help right now. Thank you for your hospitality, Your Majesty. The Queen gestured to her guards. Take him to the Azure Chamber. See that he has everything he needs. As Marcus was led away, he caught sight of Prince Kethvar watching from behind a pillar. The young alien looked worried. The Azure Chamber was beautiful and comfortable. The walls were made of blue crystal that shifted and flowed like water. There was a bed, chairs, and even what looked like a bathroom. Large windows showed a view of the city below. Marcus tested the door as soon as the guards left. It was locked, of course. Computer, he called out, hoping the room had some kind of AI system. How may I assist you? A pleasant voice asked from the walls. Can I leave this room? I am sorry, but you are restricted to your quarters for your own safety. Would you like me to adjust the lighting or temperature? No thanks, Marcus sighed. He spent the rest of the day exploring his luxurious prison. The room had everything he could want, except the one thing he needed most: a way out. That evening, as Marcus was eating dinner from crystal plates that somehow kept the food at perfect temperature, he heard a soft tapping at his window. He looked up to see Prince Kethvar clinging to the outside of the building. Marcus opened the window quickly. What are you doing out there? Coming to see you, Kethvar said as he climbed inside. The guards do not know I am here. That's dangerous. Why risk it? Kethvar sat down across from Marcus. Because I wanted to thank you properly, and because I wanted to ask you about your people. What do you want to know? Everything, Kethvar said eagerly. What are humans like? Where do you come from? How do you make decisions without a queen to guide you? Marcus spent the next hour telling Kethvar about Earth, about human cities where people came and went freely, about the concept of individual choice and democracy. The young prince listened with fascination. So humans can choose their own leaders? Kethvar asked. Yes. And we can choose our own jobs, where to live, who to marry. We make our own decisions about our lives. But how do you avoid chaos? How do you keep order? Sometimes there is chaos, Marcus admitted. But we've learned that people usually make good choices when they're free to choose. And when they make bad choices, they learn from them. Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. I have never made a choice, he said finally. My mother tells me what to learn, where to go, what to think. When I become king, the advisors will tell me what decisions to make for the good of the hive. What would you choose to do if you could choose anything? Marcus asked. I would like to see other worlds, Kethvar said without hesitation. I would like to meet other species and learn how they live. But that is impossible. A prince must stay and prepare to rule. Maybe not impossible, Marcus said. Maybe just difficult. Their conversation was interrupted by footsteps in the corridor. Kethvar quickly climbed back out the window, disappearing into the night. Marcus lay in his comfortable bed that night, thinking about the young prince's questions. He also thought about escape. The window was too high to climb down safely, and he was sure the corridors were watched. But as he drifted off to sleep, Marcus began forming a plan. If he was going to be a guest of the Queen, maybe it was time to start acting like one instead of a prisoner. Tomorrow, he would ask to see his ship and meet these engineers who were supposedly repairing it. He would also ask more questions about Velthari society. Knowledge was power, and Marcus was going to need all the power he could get to find his way out of this golden cage. Marcus had been the Queen's guest for 3 weeks. During that time, he had learned much about the Velthari and their crystal city. He had also made 3 escape attempts, each one more creative than the last. The first attempt was simple. He tried to walk out during a shift change. The guards were ready for him. The second attempt involved creating a diversion by overloading the crystal lighting system in his room. While guards rushed to fix the problem, he tried to slip out through a service tunnel. They caught him 2 levels down. The third attempt was his most creative yet. He had discovered that the crystal walls could be made to resonate by hitting them at the right frequency. He used this to create a communication network with other servants in the tower, convincing them he was a special inspector sent by the Queen. He almost made it to the main entrance before someone checked with the Queen directly. After each failed escape, Marcus expected punishment. Instead, the Queen asked to see him. Each time, she seemed more fascinated than angry. "Tell me," she said after his third attempt, "how did you learn to make the crystals sing to each other?" Marcus shrugged. "I noticed they vibrated when the wind hit them a certain way. I just experimented until I figured out how to control it." Quote, "Remarkable," Queen Zel-Andra said. "My engineers have studied those crystals for centuries and never thought to use them for communication. Maybe they weren't trying to escape," Marcus said dryly. The Queen made her glass bell laugh again. "Indeed. Your attempts to leave have taught my security forces more about potential weaknesses in 3 weeks than they learned in 3 decades." Marcus was starting to understand why the Queen kept him around. He wasn't just a curiosity. He was a puzzle box that kept producing new solutions to problems the Velthari hadn't even known they had. During his time in the palace, Marcus had also learned about the Velthari's situation. Their empire was vast but crumbling. They had once controlled dozens of star systems, but over the centuries, they had lost territory to younger, more adaptable species. The problem was their rigid caste system and their reliance on predictable behavior. Every Velthari knew their place from birth. Workers worked, soldiers fought according to ancient tactics, and leaders made decisions based on protocols that were thousands of years old. It made them stable but also stagnant. When faced with enemies who used unexpected strategies, the Velthari couldn't adapt quickly enough to respond effectively. Prince Kethvar continued to visit Marcus secretly. The young alien had become fascinated with human concepts of freedom and individual choice. He asked endless questions about Earth and human society. "Do humans ever fight wars?" Kethvar asked one evening. "All the time," Marcus admitted. "Too often, actually. But how do you win if everyone is thinking differently? How do you coordinate attacks?" Now, Marcus thought about it. That's actually our strength. When everyone thinks the same way, it's easy for an enemy to predict what you'll do. But when you have people thinking creatively and adapting to new situations, you become unpredictable. "Mother says unpredictability leads to chaos," Kethvar said. "Sometimes," Marcus agreed. "But it also leads to innovation, creativity, and the ability to solve problems in new ways." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alarm that rang throughout the palace. Both Marcus and Kethvar rushed to the window to see what was happening. In the sky above the city, ships were falling like burning stars. The Velthari defense fleet was under attack by vessels Marcus didn't recognize. Dark, angular ships that moved in chaotic patterns. "The Skorthak," Kethvar whispered. "They have found us." "Who are the Skorthak?" Marcus asked. "Nomads. Pirates. They raid our outer colonies and take what they want. But they have never attacked the homeworld before." Through the window, they watched as the strange enemy ships darted between the crystal spires, their weapons carving bright scars in the buildings. The Velthari defense ships moved in perfect formation, but they couldn't seem to land hits on the erratically moving attackers. "Why aren't your ships hitting them?" Marcus asked. "They cannot predict the attack patterns," Kethvar said, frustrated. "Our battle computers are designed to fight enemies who follow logical strategies. The Skorthak fight like crazy people," Marcus finished. "They're not following any rules or patterns. They're just causing as much damage as possible and staying unpredictable." "Exactly. Our commanders do not know how to respond." Marcus watched the battle with growing concern. The Velthari ships were magnificent, powerful, and completely ineffective against an enemy that refused to behave logically. Then he had an idea. It was risky, probably stupid, and would definitely get him in trouble. But it might also save the city. Kethvar, can you get me to the command center? What? Why? Because I think I know how to beat them, Marcus said. 20 minutes later, Marcus was standing in the Crystal Command Center, surrounded by panicking Velthari military officers. Queen Zel-Andra stood at the center of it all, her 6 eyes watching dozens of tactical displays that showed the battle going badly for her forces. Your Majesty, Kethvar announced. Marcus says he can help. Every eye in the room turned to look at Marcus. The silence was heavy with desperation and doubt. Speak, the Queen commanded. Your ships are trying to predict where the enemy will go next, Marcus said. Stop doing that. Instead, force them to go where you want them to go. Explain, demanded the military commander. A large Velthari with gold and silver bands. Marcus pointed to the tactical display. Those enemy ships are fast, but not very heavily armored. They're staying unpredictable by avoiding your strongest ships and picking off the weaker ones. But they still have to follow basic physics. He traced patterns on the display. If you position your ships here, here, and here, you create a funnel. The enemy will think they're being clever by flying through the gap, but you'll have them exactly where you want them. That would require sacrificing ships as bait, the commander said. It is not logical to knowingly put vessels in danger. Sometimes, Marcus said quietly, you have to risk something to save everything. The Queen looked at Marcus for a long moment. Outside, the sound of explosions was getting closer. Do it, she ordered. The next hour was the longest of Marcus's life. Following his suggestions, the Velthari fleet repositioned itself in seemingly vulnerable formations. The Skorthok ships took the bait, diving into what they thought were opportunities to attack isolated vessels. Instead, they found themselves trapped in carefully prepared crossfires. The unpredictable became predictable when their only choices were the ones the Velthari had left them. By dawn, the enemy fleet was destroyed or retreating. The city was saved. In the quiet aftermath, Queen Zel-Andra summoned Marcus to her private chambers. She looked tired, but thoughtful. You saved us, she said simply. I just suggested a different way of thinking about the problem, Marcus replied. Yes, she said. A human way of thinking. Unpredictable. Creative. Effective. She paused. I cannot let you leave. Marcus felt his heart sink. Your Majesty, you do not understand, she continued. This attack was just the beginning. The Skorthok will return with more ships. Other enemies will see our weakness. My people need to learn what you know. You can't learn humanity by keeping a human prisoner, Marcus said. Can I not? The Queen asked. Already my son thinks differently because of your influence. Already my military commanders question old assumptions. Change has begun. Marcus realized with growing dread that he had made himself too valuable to ever be allowed to leave. His help had saved the Velthari, but it had also made him their most important prisoner. Marcus stood before a room full of Velthari military commanders, feeling completely out of place. The Queen had made good on her promise to keep him as an advisor, and now he was expected to help transform their entire military strategy. The enemy will return within the month, announced Commander Vextar, the head of the royal fleet. Our scouts report a massive Skorthok armada gathering in the outer system. The room buzzed with nervous clicking sounds as the commanders discussed traditional defensive strategies. Marcus listened, growing more frustrated by the minute. You're all thinking about this wrong, he finally said, interrupting their discussion. The room fell silent. Commander Vextar's mandibles clicked irritably. The human speaks out of turn. Let him speak. Queen Zel-Andra commanded from her observation platform above the strategy table. Marcus stepped forward. You're planning to defend your worlds the same way you've always defended them, by putting your strongest fleets in front of your most important planets and waiting for the enemy to attack. It is the logical approach, Vextar said stiffly. It's also exactly what they expect you to do, Marcus replied. The Scorthok have been raiding your colonies for decades. They know how you fight. They know where you'll put your ships. They're counting on you being predictable. Prince Kethvar, who had been allowed to observe the military meetings as part of his education, leaned forward eagerly. What do you suggest instead? Marcus smiled at the young prince. Over the past weeks, Kethvar had become his strongest supporter in the palace, often asking questions that helped Marcus explain human concepts to the bewildered Velthari. We don't wait for them to attack us, Marcus said. We attack them first, in ways they won't expect. The commanders erupted in shocked clicking. Impossible, Vextar declared. We cannot launch offensive operations without knowing their exact fleet positions, supply lines, and battle plans. You don't need to know any of that, Marcus said calmly. You just need to know that they're gathering in the outer system, which means they're vulnerable. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus outlined a strategy that horrified the traditional commanders. Instead of one massive defensive fleet, he suggested breaking their forces into dozens of small, fast-moving groups. These groups would hit Scorthok supply ships, attack their staging areas, and generally cause chaos throughout their gathering fleet. But what if they break through our scattered forces? Asked Commander Thysis Ra. What if they reach our core worlds while our fleets are spread across the system? Then we fall back and hit them from behind, Marcus said. We make them fight on 3 fronts at once. We make every victory cost them more than they can afford. This is madness, Vextar muttered. Honorable warriors do not skulk and ambush like common pirates. Honorable warriors adapt to survive, Marcus replied. And right now, survival means being unpredictable. Queen Zel-Andra had been silent through most of the discussion. Now she spoke from her platform above them. We will try the human strategy, she announced. Commander Vextar, you will coordinate the traditional defensive forces. Prince Kethvar will work with Marcus to organize the irregular units. Marcus was surprised. Your Majesty, with respect, the prince has no military experience. Then he will learn, she said firmly. My son has been asking too many questions about freedom and choice. Perhaps commanding warriors will teach him the weight of decision-making. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus found himself training Velthari crews in tactics their species had never used before. He taught them about hit-and-run attacks, psychological warfare, and the art of making an enemy afraid of shadows. The hardest part was convincing them to think independently. For millennia, Velthari warriors had followed precise orders and executed predetermined battle plans. Now Marcus was asking them to improvise, adapt, and make split-second decisions without consulting their superiors. Prince Kethvar proved to be a natural leader. Unlike the older commanders, he embraced the human concepts of flexibility and creative thinking. Soon he was coming up with tactical innovations that impressed even Marcus. What if we use our mining ships as weapons? Kethvar suggested during one planning session. They're not warships, so the enemy won't see them as threats. But their industrial cutting beams could slice through Scorthok hulls. Brilliant, Marcus said. Disguised weapons platforms. They'll never see it coming. When the Scorthok fleet finally arrived, they found a very different enemy than they expected. Instead of neat defensive formations, they faced a swarming attack from dozens of small Velthari ships that appeared from behind asteroids, struck hard, and vanished before return fire could be organized. The mining ship strategy worked perfectly. Several Scorthok cruisers were destroyed before their commanders realized that the innocent-looking industrial vessels were actually deadly threats. But the real genius of Marcus's strategy became clear when the confused and battered Scorthok fleet tried to regroup. Every time they formed up for a traditional attack, another swarm of Velthari ships would appear from an unexpected direction and force them to defend themselves. The Skorthok were used to fighting enemies who followed predictable patterns. Against an opponent who refused to behave logically, their own chaotic fighting style became a disadvantage. They couldn't adapt to an enemy who was even more unpredictable than they were. Within a week, the mighty Skorthok armada was in full retreat. They had lost nearly half their ships and hadn't managed to take a single Velthari colony. The victory celebration in the Crystal City was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Velthari citizens filled the streets, their crystal bodies glowing with excitement. For the first time in centuries, they had won a decisive victory against a major enemy. But Marcus noticed something else happening during the celebration. Young Velthari were asking questions. They wanted to know how the victory had been achieved. They wanted to understand these new tactics. They wanted to think for themselves. Commander Vextar approached Marcus during the celebration, his expression troubled. "Human, what have you done to my people?" "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "My subordinates no longer simply follow orders," Vextar said. "They ask why. They suggest alternatives. They think." He paused. "Some of the older commanders believe this is dangerous." Marcus looked around at the celebrating Veltari. He saw Prince Kethvar talking excitedly with a group of young officers, explaining the tactical innovations they had used. He saw workers and soldiers mixing freely instead of staying within their traditional castes. "Change is always dangerous," Marcus said quietly. "The question is whether it's more dangerous than staying the same." As the celebration continued into the night, Marcus realized that his influence had spread far beyond military strategy. The Velthari were beginning to discover the power of individual thought and creative problem-solving. But he also realized that this change was creating new tensions within their society. The old guard was growing nervous about the erosion of traditional order, while the younger generation was hungry for more freedom and independence. The war with the Skorthok was over, but Marcus suspected that a different kind of conflict was just beginning. The victory over the Skorthok had changed everything. Marcus could see it in the way young Velthari carried themselves, in the questions they asked, in the way they looked at their ancient traditions, with new skepticism. He could also see it in the worried faces of the older commanders and nobles who gathered in small groups, speaking in hushed cliques about the dangerous changes spreading through their society. The crisis came to a head during what was supposed to be a routine council meeting. Marcus was present as a military advisor when Commander Vextar stood before Queen Zelandra with a formal petition. "Your Majesty," Vextar began, his voice tight with controlled anger, "I must speak of a growing threat to our stability." "Speak," the Queen commanded. "The human's influence has spread beyond military matters," Vextar continued. "Workers question their assignments. Soldiers debate orders. Even the noble castes argue among themselves about tradition and change." His 6 eyes fixed on Marcus. "This creature has brought chaos to our ordered society." Marcus felt the attention of everyone in the room focus on him. He had known this moment would come eventually. "You requested my help to save your people," he said calmly. "That help came with consequences." Quote, "Consequences that threaten the very foundation of our civilization," declared noble house leader Seath March. "My own offspring have begun asking why they cannot choose their own professions. Factory supervisors report workers suggesting improvements to processes that have functioned perfectly for centuries." Queen Zelandra listened in silence as more complaints were voiced. The pattern was clear. The rigid caste system that had defined Velthari society for millennia was beginning to crack under the pressure of new ideas. "What do you propose?" the Queen asked finally. Vextar straightened. "Remove the human's influence. Restrict his contact with our people. Return to the proven ways that have served us for thousands of years." "And if the Skortok return with new allies?" Prince Kethvar asked suddenly from his position near the throne. "If other enemies learn to counter our traditional tactics, will our proven ways save us then?" "You speak out of turn, Prince," Vextar said coldly. "I speak as the heir to this throne," Kethvar replied, standing up. And I have seen what happens when we cling too tightly to the old ways. We become weak, predictable, easy prey for those who adapt and grow. Marcus watched with growing concern as the argument escalated. He had never intended to cause a civil conflict among the Velthari. Enough, Queen Zelandra commanded. The room fell silent. This debate will continue in private session. Marcus Chen, you will return to your quarters. As Marcus was escorted away by guards, he caught Kethvar's eye. The young prince looked worried but determined. Marcus had a feeling that the private session was going to be explosive. He was right. For the next 3 days, urgent meetings were held throughout the palace. Marcus could hear raised voices and angry clicking sounds even through the crystal walls of his room. On the third night, Kethvar climbed through his window as he had so many times before. But this time, the prince looked exhausted and troubled. "What's happening out there?" Marcus asked. "Civil war," Kethvar said simply. "Not with weapons yet, but with words and ideas. The nobles demand that you be removed. The younger castes threaten to rebel if the old restrictions are reinforced." Marcus felt a chill. "This is my fault. I should never have interfered with your society." "No," Kethvar said firmly. "This conflict was always coming. You just made it happen faster. The old ways were killing us slowly. Better to face the crisis now, when we still have choices." "What does your mother think?" Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. "She is torn. She loves our people but fears what change might bring. She values what you have taught us, but worries about the cost of your influence." "And what do you think?" Marcus asked. "I think," Kethvar said slowly, "that a cage made of crystal is still a cage, no matter how beautiful it is." The next morning, Marcus was summoned to a special session of the Royal Council. When he arrived, he found the room divided into 2 clear factions. The older nobles and commanders stood on one side, while younger Veltari, including many of the officers who had served under his irregular tactics, stood on the other. Queen Zelandra sat alone on her throne, looking older than Marcus had ever seen her. "Marcus Chen," she began formally, "you have served as advisor to this crown and friend to this house. Your counsel saved our homeworld and our people. But your presence has also brought division to our society." Marcus nodded. He knew what was coming. "Therefore," the queen continued, "I offer you a choice. You may remain here permanently as royal advisor, with all the honors and protections that position entails. You will help us navigate the changes your influence has brought. In return, you will never leave this world." The older nobles clicked approval, while the younger faction remained silent. "Or," the queen said, her voice heavy with emotion, "you may leave freely, with our gratitude, and a ship capable of reaching any destination you choose. But if you leave, you may never return, and contact between our species will be forbidden." Marcus felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. He understood the choice perfectly: stay and become a permanent prisoner with a fancy title, or leave and abandon the Velthari to figure out their future without human guidance. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "may I suggest a third option?" The queen's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Speak. Let me leave, but not as an exile," Marcus said. "Let me return to human space as an ambassador. Not to bring more humans here, but to establish formal diplomatic relations between our species." "Impossible," Commander Vextar interjected. "Your culture is already changed," Marcus replied. "The question is whether that change will continue in isolation or as part of a larger galactic community." Prince Kethvar stepped forward. "I support the humans' proposal, Mother. We cannot hide from the universe forever. You would risk our civilization on alien promises?" "Noble," Zythmar demanded. "I would risk stagnation for the chance to grow," Kethvar replied. Queen Zelandra was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, Her voice was barely above a whisper. "The choice should not be mine alone," she said. "If we have truly learned anything from human concepts of freedom and choice, then this decision should involve more than just the royal will." Marcus watched in amazement as the Queen announced something unprecedented in Velthari history, a general council where representatives from all castes would vote on the question of contact with humanity. The debate raged for days. In the end, the vote was close but decisive. The Velthari chose to take the risk of friendship over the safety of isolation. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the hangar where his repaired ship waited. But he was not alone. Prince Kethvar stood beside him, wearing the simple clothing of a traveler instead of his royal robes. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked. "I have never been sure about anything in my life," Kethvar replied. "That is why I must do it." Queen Zel-Andra approached them, flanked by a small honor guard. "My son," she said to Kethvar, "you know you do not have to do this. You could rule here, guide our people through these changes. Someone else can rule." Kethvar said gently, "My cousin Thexara is wise and adaptable, but no one else can be our first ambassador to the human worlds." The Queen turned to Marcus. "I trust you to keep my son safe. I'll treat him like family," Marcus promised. As their ship lifted off from the Crystal City, Marcus looked back at the world that had been his prison, and was now something more: a friend, an ally, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to choose their own path. "So," Kethvar said as they entered hyperspace, "tell me more about this thing humans call democracy." Marcus smiled. "Well, it's complicated, messy, sometimes inefficient, and absolutely the worst system of government ever invented, too. Except for all the others?" Kethvar suggested. "Exactly," Marcus laughed. "You're going to fit right in."